Hello everybody, I'm Clare. What I'd like to do in this little video is give you some encouragement and some information and some hints and tips about how to actually speak to transgender people and ask the appropriate questions, because you will be dealing with some transgendered people, of males to females, females to males, as well as all the gay and lesbian and asexual and queer and all those other ragtag mob of people that comprise the human race, as well as all the cisgendered normal men and normal women. And I am transgendered. I was born a male. My name was Anthony John, which I lived with for 60 years, pretending to be a male and not doing terribly well about it. And at the age of 60 odd, I came out and acknowledged and admitted that I am actually a woman living in a male body. And all that time, nobody knew that I was transgender. I didn't even know I was transgender. I just thought I was a rather unmanly, quite useless male. But I did have 3 marriages, 3 divorces, and 7 beautiful children. So I tried pretty hard to be a bloke. But my job now, amongst other things, is to help people in businesses, gymnasiums, professions, salespeople, as many people as possible, to actually care for and be sensitive to transgendered people. Because we're a minority, we have been ostracized, criticized. I was going to say circumcised, but that's not true. And generally treated badly by society for many, many years, as you well know. And there's more of us coming out now. There's literally hundreds of thousands of people who are transgendered to some extent. There's always a spectrum of these things. I'm hopefully at the top of the spectrum because I've come out completely. I live, I work, I socialize, and I just love being a woman because it's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me. But considering that there are, a certain proportion of transgendered people in the world, in our society, the general statistics say that about 1 to 2% of people are transgendered. I think that's nonsense. I think 1 to 2% of people are willing to admit that they are transgendered and actually have done something towards becoming their true selves. But I would put it at 18 to 20% of people, particularly men, who would love to be able to express their female, feminine, womanly selves, but will never have the chance because the risks are far too great. The risks are huge. The risks are losing your relationship, your marriage, your children, your reputation, your job, and possibly your life. Because transgender people generally tend to suicide very, very much more often than your average cisgendered person. So considering that you will walk into or communicate with your business or your gym or your professional office, quite a few transgender people, and some of them will admit and some of them won't. And I've actually made a PowerPoint presentation about why people are transgendered and why we need a little bit more sensitivity and acceptance and encouragement than your average person. But the hard part is, how do you know if a person is transgendered? how do you know if it's appropriate to know that they're transgendered? How you know it's appropriate to address them in the way that they want to be addressed, or do you just ignore it and just treat them as a normal person? But considering that there's a lot of people that will walk into your business or your office or your gym or wherever who have needs emotionally and even physically that you could address to give them better service and better care and make them much more happy with your service, and they'll tell their friends, and you'll be busier than ever before. So the question is, how do you actually find out if it's appropriate? If it's not appropriate, forget it. What questions do you ask? How do you ask the questions? As I've said in the PowerPoint presentation, if we adopt an intake form with a bit more of a choice about things, not just are you a man, are you a woman, are you an other, which is really a little bit insulting to an awful lot of people. If your intake form will have more choices about gender preference, sexual preference if necessary, pronouns that you wish to be addressed by, and the name you would like to be addressed by. And if you find that information out from an intake form, which, if the person is I hate the word normal, but if the person is cisgendered, not transgendered, then they'll just tick man or woman and just forget the rest. But if the person is transgendered and you if you ask him or her to tick the boxes of gender identity and pronouns and name that they prefer, you will win their hearts, you will win their loyalty, and you will give them much better service. So the intake form is kind of, it's got to come. It's one of those things that nobody's really done very well yet. I've made a good suggestion in the PowerPoint presentation if you get to watch it. But there are other ways to ask the question. It requires a degree of sensitivity. It requires a little bit of practice, because like everything else, the first time you ask is going to be uncomfortable, but the second time will be probably more uncomfortable. But the fourth and the fifth time and the 12th time, if you start to develop a habit of actually wanting to find out if a person is transgendered or gay or lesbian or queer or asexual or multisexual or whatever the hell, it's just got to be good for the person, for you, and for your business or service, whatever it is. So there's always a range of questions that are asked in the situation where a person comes into a professional service. Like, for example, I practiced chiropractic for many years, and there was a range of questions that I pretty much always asked in a way. What's your problem? Why have you come here? What do you think I can do for you? Who have you seen previously? When does it hurt? Why does it hurt? What makes it better? What makes it worse? What have you done previously? And all those standard, simple questions that people are asked. But there ought to be, in my opinion, another question at the end of that. And you can frame it your own way. I'm not going to tell you how to actually ask it, but the idea is to say something like, Mrs. Bloggs, or Mr. Bloggs, or Master Bloggs, is there anything else that you would like to tell me, in confidence, of course, that might make me more able to give you the service that you need? Anything about your gender, anything like that you might want me to know and that might help me to relate to you more easily, and particularly if you've got certain pronouns that you like to use, we'll make sure that we use them. because it's our way of showing you respect. And if the person is obviously, a bloke or a, normal woman, you don't have to bother unless you have an intuitive idea that there might be a gender confusion there, or if they fill out the intake form and tick some of the boxes that kind of indicate that. And then you can assure them that you're going to ask them and receive their answer in strict confidence, and that you're doing it for their benefit. Because I remember when I first went to a gymnasium when I first came out, the person that was kind of inducting me into the situation said to me, my name was then Tony, what do you want from this gymnasium? What results, what kind of service do you want? And I said, thank you for asking. And I said, I am transgendered. I am in the process of transitioning. I would like the kind of exercises, the kind of advice, and the kind of service that will help me to develop a little bit more of a feminine body. Because at that stage I was built like a brick dunny, and I'm 6 foot tall. I said, I would like to make sure that my arms are not bulked up with muscle. I'd like my arms and legs to be strong, flexible, but womanish, feminine, slender. I'd like to develop my abdominal oblique muscles so that I have a bit of a waist and a bit of a shape. If you can do that, I'd be really, really grateful. And they did. They gave me the kind of exercises that didn't bulk up muscle, that gave me what looked like longer, slender legs, because I still have legs like a rugby footballer. And they didn't give me the kind of stuff that would make me have big biceps and triceps and all those kind of things. And if you can do that, if you can bring yourself to overcome the initial discomfort of having to ask and overcoming the fear of rejection or whatever that people might come up with, because it's your job. It's your job to know who you're dealing with, what they want, and how you can give them that effect or that service more effectively. And it's like your doctor will ask you, have you opened your bowels today? Now, what's more intimate than that? It's the most intimate question you can ever be asked. Have you done a poo today? And the doctor will do that because that's his job. He needs to know if you've constipated or whether you've got bowel obstructions or things like that. So in the beginning, when I was first practicing, it was hard to ask that question. But you ask it to the first 10 people and suddenly it becomes part of your standard history-taking, information gathering. And you'll find that if you will take the risk of asking the first half dozen times of the first half dozen people, do you have any issues as far as gender or sexuality that you need me to know in strict confidence that will help me give you the kind of service that you need? You'll find it becomes just part of your information gathering technique. And I encourage you to do that because transgendered people like myself are in difficulty all the time with people's acceptance and the sensitivity, and we get abused and beaten up and all those kind of things. But if we go to you and we're paying you, reasonable money, we appreciate so much you actually asking some of those questions. So I encourage you to develop your own way. If you're a manager or in charge of people in your office or your gymnasium or whatever, I encourage you to encourage them to ask these questions if they're in a position to do so and if it seems appropriate. And put the information on the patient's confidential